And welcome back to Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and this is my Aegar deck tech. So Aegar, I wasn't, he was one of the ones that I was sort of on the fence about building a deck with. And I thought, one of the reasons why I liked him, but then I didn't like him. I thought Giant Wizard Tribal was very weird to sort of combine those two tribes. But the more I thought about him and the more I looked at him and the more I researched cards that go with him, it really isn't that. I mean, yes, the obvious thinking here is I cast my Aegar and then I Blasphemous Act, okay? Or maybe Chain Reaction. Sure, you will draw a bunch of cards off of that, okay? So, but your commander's going to die, right? So you're going to board wipe. You'll draw however many cards there. Okay, so let's say we cast Blasphemous Act. However many creatures there are on the battlefield. Let's say there's 8. And it's not even your creatures. It's only your opponent's creatures, right? So we can't count our creatures. So let's just pretend there's 8 creatures that our opponents control. That's quite a bit, but let's say there is. We're going to draw 8 cards. We're going to wipe the board. That's a pretty good. We're going to kill our commander and our other creatures. So, I mean, that's okay. And there is really, surprisingly, not that many cards. Even in red, there's not that many cards that you can do that with, right? There's Blasphemous Act, Chain Reaction. There's a few. Right? You're going to want to do a lot of damage. You're going to want to guarantee yourself a draw. So in order to do that, casting, a Starstorm, for example. I mean, I put Starstorm in this deck, but how many cards are you going to draw off of that? How many creatures are you going to kill with that, right? It's really not, I wouldn't want to build my deck around that. It just sounds very iffy. And then, of course, I looked up Giants and Wizards, right? Because we don't have to just do spells. We could do Giants and Wizards. And there wasn't a ton of those either, at least not that did lots of damage, right? If you're looking to do a ton of damage with one wizard or one giant, it's not great, right? You could just go the combat route and just attack your opponent with a bunch of big giants and hope they block, and when they die, you'll get to draw a card. So that's good. You could go that route. There is a lot of routes you can go with this commander, which is what I like about it. I thought the interesting way would be to go with the wizard route and pingers. The one thing that blue and red does well is it has wizards that ping stuff, okay? There's quite a few. And I know what you're going to say. Well, pinging doesn't do excess damage. What good is that? Well, I'll tell you. We don't have to do the excess damage, okay? If you read the text on Aegar, whenever a creature or planeswalker an opponent controls is dealt excess damage, if a giant, wizard, or spell you control dealt damage to it this turn, draw a card. So what that means is if we have a prodigal sorcerer or a prodigal pyromancer in play, okay, and one of our opponents, for example, casts a Blasphemous Act, okay, we can go, I ping that creature and I ping that creature. You don't kill them. You don't want to kill any creatures. That's actually the opposite of what you want to do. What you want to do is you want to ping 2 creatures that have a higher than 1 toughness, but then are going to die to the Blasphemous Act, right? Because those 2 creatures, when they die, they're going to take excess damage from the Blasphemous Act, but they also took damage from a wizard of yours this turn, and you're going to draw a card, right? Or 2 cards, or however many creatures you pinged, right? I think that's a better and less random and more efficient way of going about this deck. And then we can sort of sit back a little, right? So let's say, for example, we have an opponent with a Solemn Simulacrum and we have another opponent with an Eternal Witness, right? We don't have to be involved in this equation at all, right? So our opponent with the Sad Robot attacks our other opponent, and he has an Eternal Witness as a blocker. And he goes, I'll block with my Eternal Witness, right? So it's going to block. So they're going to do 2 damage to each other, okay? We have a pinger in play. So what we're going to do is we're going to ping the Sad Robot. Now, why are we going to ping the Sad Robot? Because the Sad Robot's going to take 1 damage from a wizard of ours. So that's the first condition of Aegar. And then what's going to happen is it's going to take 2 damage from the Eternal Witness, okay? Remember, Aegar says whenever a creature an opponent controls is dealt excess damage. So what's happened is now the Solemn Simulacrum has taken 1 damage, so it has essentially 1 toughness left, and then it took 2 damage from the Eternal Witness, so that qualifies as excess damage, and so we met that part of the condition, and we also did it damage with a wizard, so we met that part, right? We don't want to shoot the Eternal Witness. If we shoot the Eternal Witness, it'll just die. It's not going to take excess damage. That's going to do nothing. We're going to shoot the Solemn Simulacrum, because that's going to end up taking excess damage. So that's what this deck is going to be doing a lot. It's going to be doing a lot of, we just sit back We let our opponents do their thing, and whenever we see our opportunity, we ping, right? Whenever a creature, an opponent is going to attack with a creature, okay, and we're going to go, okay, I'm going to ping during the, I guess it's going to be the blocking step, right? Because your opponents are going, you're going to wait to see what they assign as blockers, and you're going to go, okay, who do I want to smack to get a card draw out of this, right? So there's going to be a lot of that. So I'm not going to go over all the pingers. Obviously, in red and blue, there is a bunch. Yeah, I know. I mean, you can put in the ones you want. Is it Staticaster is great because it can hit lots of different targets and also has haste and also has flash, just as an example. I will go over a few here, though. Ironcrag Pyromancer. This guy's actually not a pinger. However, he's fantastic in this deck because he, whenever you draw your second card each turn. So we're going to get a card draw off of our Aegar, maybe even two. So if say it's an opponent's turn, and we ping a couple things, then we get to draw two cards, right, from his ability, and then we get to, again, we just drew two cards, so now this Ironcrag Pyromancer kicks in, and he deals 3 damage, and we can draw another card, assuming we do excess damage, like 3 damage, so we have to hit something with toughness 2 or less, and we get to draw a card again. So that's going to be great in this deck. Tibor and Lumia is just, if you've ever played against a Tibor and Lumia deck, this card is fantastic. Now it's the situation where, an opponent casts a Blasphemous Act and we go cast any red spell, and Tibor and Lumia triggers, deals damage to everything on the board, and we get to draw a card for every single one because it's a wizard and it's dealing damage, right? This is going to be a deck where you really got to sort of hang back and think about what you're doing, right? But Tibor and Lumia is going to be fantastic in this deck. Ravika and Grim Lavamancer, I'll mention these two because these two are the only ones that are going to deal more than 1 damage. They deal 2 damage. As long as there's a creature with a toughness 1 or less, I guess a toughness of 1 because you can't have less than 1. But as long as there's a creature with a toughness of 1, Ravika and Grim Lavamancer are just going to draw us a card. And don't forget, we are killing a creature here. So it's not like we're just looking to draw cards. We are killing our opponent's creatures. We can even just smack our opponent for 2 damage with Grim Lavamancer if we want to, right? This is any target. We also have Dismissive Pyromancer. Again, this is the only other one. It's not super great, but it deals 4 damage to a creature, so it is going to increase the chances that we get that excess damage. I put Niv Mizzet Draco Genius in here. So this is probably the worst of the Niv Mizzets. However, it's the one that works in our deck the best because we can just activate that ping ability whenever we want. It's a wizard, right? And again, we can just go ping. Like if we have lots of mana up, we can just start pinging things like crazy. The other Niv Mizzets don't really work that well because the triggers sort of happen. We don't really have a lot of control over when the triggers happen. Mercurial Chemister, another wizard that can deal an excessive amount of damage if we need to, right? We're going to discard a card and he's going to deal damage equal to its converted mana cost. So that can be, as much as we need, right? So discard something big, do a lot of damage, draw a card. I put Fate Stitcher in this deck just because, again, we have a lot of pingers. We have a lot of tapping going on. So and again, Fate Stitcher is a wizard, so that does matter. So we do have a lot of pingers and tappers and all that kind of stuff. So Fate Stitcher is going to be great in this deck. Also, 1,000-Year Elixir. Again, our commander doesn't tap, but this is just fantastic in any deck where you're going to be tapping lots. We can untap a creature to do it again. Fantastic. So let's talk about the giants. I talked about Hammerfist Giant when I first did my review of Aegar. The first card I thought of was Hammerfist Giant, which I always thought was a goofy card because he kills himself, right? He deals 4 damage to each creature without flying and each player. So he kills himself because he has 4 toughness. However, this can be a situation where we are going to hit like 5-6 creatures, right? We can get a lot of card draw off of this. So I think he's going to be good in this deck. Bloodfire Colossus is another one. He costs 8. That's a lot. But, pay 1 mana, to kill all our opponent's creatures and draw a bunch of cards. That seems like it's worth it. Thundercloud Shaman. This is really the only other one. We don't have a lot of giants in this deck. But keep in mind, we can also just deal damage with our giants, right? We can just attack with our Bloodfire Colossus. And, when our opponents chump block, we get to draw a card, right? Or we can just block with our Thundercloud Shaman or something, right? All we want to do is excess damage. So again, we just block with something, and we are going to get attacked too, obviously. So our opponent swings with a creature, and we can ping that creature and then block with our Thundercloud Shaman, draw a card, right? Crush Underfoot is another one. This is actually a giant tribal card, which is kind of funny. But it doesn't matter because we're going to choose a giant creature we control, and it deals damage equal to its power to target creature. So this is a punch effect, and it's going to draw us a card. One thing that you have to consider whenever you're making a deck like this where you are relying on killing your other creatures, right? For anyone who's played a Mathis deck, that they'll know this. Having things that guarantee that your opponent has creatures in play that you can kill is going to be important. So Forbidden Orchard and Akron Horse are great because we can give our opponent, right? So for Forbidden Orchard, we can just give our opponent a 1/1 and then kill it with something, right? Akron Horse is going to be super fantastic, right? Akron Horse sits there giving all of our opponents creatures every turn. And then, Blasphemous Act, it's going to kill them all. Or in this case, we can even Starstorm because there's all these 1/1s in play. We can just Starstorm for 2, right? So 4 mana. Kill like 5 creatures and draw 5 cards. And then because we do have a lot of pingers in this deck, we got to take advantage of that as well. Charisma. Anyone who's played a Tibor and Lumia deck, this is the combo with them, right? Charisma goes on your Tibor and Lumia, and you cast a red spell. It deals 1 damage to every single creature in play, and you gain control of all of them. Pretty good combo. We can also just put it on any of our pingers. We can just put it on our Izzet Staticaster and just, ping one thing at a time and gain control of one thing at a time. I have Curiosity and Sigil of Sleep. These also are great for pingers. It's not a creature, but again, there's not always going to be a situation where we want to be pinging creatures, right? We can just use Curiosity to put it on one of our pingers and just draw a card with it. Just, on the end step, no, we didn't need to ping nothing this turn, so let's just ping one of our opponents and draw a card. Or let's ping one of our opponents and it has Sigil of Sleep on it, and we'll bounce one of their creatures. And then let's really take it to the watershed. Willbreaker and Dismiss into Dream. Again, if you're playing a deck that you're going to be targeting your opponent's creatures a lot, these guys are both fantastic. Right, Willbreaker. Now we don't even need Charisma. Willbreaker is just we ping our opponent's Avacyn and we gain control of it. Right, we ping our opponent's Avacyn and dismiss the dreams, forces them to sacrifice it. I mean, both these cards are going to be fantastic in this deck because we're going to be targeting our opponent's creatures a lot. Torbrand and Fiery Emancipation, these are just no-brainers, really. I don't love cards like Fiery Emancipation, but it just seems too good in this deck to pass up on, right? So if a source you control would deal damage, any source we control to a permanent player, it deals triple that damage. So now all of our pingers are going to deal 3 damage. The ones that deal 1 are going to deal 3 damage anyway, right? The ones that deal more than that, right? Our Grim Lavamancer is going to deal 6 damage. Yeah, I can't pass up on that. Even with Torbrand, right? Torbrand, our Grim Lavamancer is going to deal 4 damage, right? All of our pingers are going to deal 3 damage. That's just fantastic. Another thing that we want to be happening a lot is attacking. Again, we want our opponent to be attacking with that Solemn Simulacrum so that it can be blocked. We want a lot of that interaction. So we put some goad effects in here. Disrupt Decorum, Besmirch, these are just good cards in general. But having them in a deck like this where we want our opponents to be attacking each other lots is great. I also have Shiny Impetus and Bloodthirsty Blade. Goading our creatures, our opponent's creatures is just going to be very useful for us. And again, you want to think about which creatures you're goading, right? We want a big creature to be goaded, which works good for us anyway, right? Because then our opponents are getting attacked by big creatures. So we're going to goad big creatures, right? So we put our Bloodthirsty Blade or our Shiny Impetus on a big creature. That creature has to attack, and our other opponents either take the damage, which is good for us, or they block, which is also good for us. And then Grappling Hook. This one's great. I was thinking, how can I force combat damage, right? Because Aegar's ability, again, it includes combat damage. Let's not forget about that. So what we can do is we can put Grappling Hook on one of our giants. We can put it on one of our wizards too, but I'd say more likely we put it on a giant. So we put Grappling Hook on our Thundercloud giant or our commander even, and it's going to get double strike. And then when it attacks, we can force a creature to block it right? So what we do is we're basically just going to pick a creature that is going to get squashed, right? No pun intended, by our giant. And we get to draw a card because it's going to do excess damage. So that card's going to be great in this deck. And then we want, we do want some board wipes. Board wipes are going to be great. Obviously, we have the obvious ones, but unfortunately, there isn't a lot that aren't going to kill our own creatures. Chandra's Ignition is going to be great. Ideally, we want to use Chandra's Ignition on our commander so he doesn't die. But, we could always put it on a bigger creature so we can kill more stuff. Mizium Mortars is going to deal damage to only our opponent's creatures, so that's going to be good. Bonfire of the Damned deals damage to target player and each creature he or she controls. So again, we can just aim at that at one guy. Immolation Gyre, this is a new one. It deals X damage to each creature and planeswalker you don't control, where X is the number of instant sorcery cards in your graveyard. So, that's not going to be. I mean, we have a fair amount for sure. This isn't Is It deck. So if that's 5 or 6, that's pretty good. 6 damage to each creature we don't control. That's fantastic. It's going to draw us a lot of cards. Volcanic Vision. This is a card that got played. Used to get played a lot, and doesn't so much. I mean, 7 is a lot of mana. But, let's return a expensive instance or sorcery, like Blasphemous Act would be great, and we'll deal 9 damage to each of our opponent's creatures. Not only that, we're returning it to our hand, so great card. I also put Pyromancer's Goggles in here because we can double up these effects, right? So we can, I got Lightning Bolt in this deck, so let's cast a Lightning Bolt with our Pyromancer's Goggles, and we'll kill 2 creatures and draw 2 cards, or we could double up, if there's a big creature in play, if our opponent has a 5/5 creature, we can double bolt it and kill it and then draw a card, right? Or we can double Volcanic Vision and return 2 things to play and deal a whole bunch more damage, right? I mean, this card is just going to be great in this deck. And then I put a lot of cards in here that, I wanted cards that we were going to get benefit from, but also deal damage, so we could get the normal benefit from it and then also draw a card off of our Aegar. So I put Expansion, Explosion. So we want instants and sorceries that we're going to deal damage so we can get that draw effect, and then also something else, right? So in this case, we're probably going to cast Explosion, deal X damage to any target. It's going to be a creature. We get to draw cards, and then we'll get to draw another card. All these cards are good cards anyway, so we're not really going out of our way here. Prophetic Bolt, another card that used to get played a lot more in Commander and not so much anymore. It does cost 5, but it's an instant, and we're going to be doing a lot of stuff on our opponent's turns. So we deal 4 damage to a creature, we draw a card, then we look at the top 4 cards, put 1 in our hand. It's great. I also have Rouse Outburst. Basically I'm just looking for cards that are going to deal damage, and so that we can get the card draw, and then we get another effect on top of that. And then Suffocating Blast, counter target spell, 3 damage to a creature. So again, we want to aim this at a creature that that's going to have a toughness of 2 or less, right? Because then we get that card draw because it's excess damage. And that's pretty much it. There's a lot of different avenues we're going in this deck, right? We got pingers, we got effects that we can get from those pingers, we got giants, we got board wipes, we got a lot of stuff going on in this deck. And then the rest of the deck is your typical sort of Is It control deck, I guess, right? But I think this deck can be a lot of fun. And I really like, Aegar, you can go a few different directions with them, but I really like the direction that I went with it. It's really interesting and something definitely that I've never done before. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy. Thanks for tuning in.